no matter what industry you're in, you're having massive increases in competition. But the good side of it is that we have AI now, which can essentially up level all of your.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level. Join Josh Hadley, an 8-figure ecom business owner and investor, as he interviews highly successful business owners. Get ready, because you're going to learn specific actions you can take today to help your business reach its full potential and leave a lasting impact on the world.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Adam Heist, and Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth. Today, I am speaking with Mark de Grasse, founder of the AI Branding Academy and former president of digitalmarketer.com. Today, we're going to be talking about a framework that Mark has built that can elevate the performance of any brand and how this is going to allow you to differentiate yourself amidst all the overseas competition that continues to increase year over year on Amazon. This episode is brought to you by Ecom Breakthrough, where I specialize in investing in and scaling 7-figure e-commerce companies to 8 figures and beyond. If you're an ambitious e-commerce entrepreneur looking for a partner who can help take your brand to the next level, my team and I bring hands-on experience, strategic insights, and the resources needed to fuel your growth. So if you or someone you know is ready to scale or looking for an investment partner, reach out to me directly at josh@ecombreakthrough.com. That's ecom with 2 M's, and let's turn your dreams into reality. But today, I am super excited to introduce you all to Mark de Grasse. As mentioned before, he is the former president of Digital Marketer, and he has over 20 years of experience in various marketing positions, ranging from content development and digital marketing to brand management and business strategy. Mark was the host and primary educator for Digital Marketer's Content Marketing Master Certification and Social Media Mastery Certification. He has created over 3,000 marketing tutorials ranging from content production to website design and to marketing strategy. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you, Josh. Great intro.
Well, hey, it's easy when I'm just talking all about you. So, Mark, I'm genuinely excited to have you on the show here today because I first heard you present at, you were at Kevin King's $1 Billion Seller Summit and the Level Up Summit you were speaking at. And what you shared there, I think, is like truly game changing in terms of like, where is marketing headed in the future? Where is branding headed in the future? You came out with a book. You've got decades of experience in the marketing world. And so I think you have a very fascinating approach. And you're speaking to an audience of e-commerce business owners, right, that have found success primarily through Amazon, but it's getting harder and harder every year, right? Amazon continues to raise their fees. The margin squeezes on. You've got increased amount of competition coming from overseas competitors that are just driving prices downward. So, Mark, where do you think we begin with this conversation in your decades of experience with the plethora of issues that these e-commerce business owners are facing in today's environment?
Well, I think number one is don't panic, because that's usually people's first take, especially when it comes to like AI and change. But the fact of the matter is that it's happening with every business. And this is really the first kind of great revolution we're having in digital marketing, because we've been kind of stagnant and doing the same thing for the last like 10 to 20 years. Same methods, same platforms, same methods of business and everything else that we do. But it's, I think AI is a big disruptor. Of course, we'll talk about that quite a bit. But then the world itself is changing. Like consumer habits are changing, consumer expectations are changing. Consumers have less money, and now platforms like Amazon are opening up to increasing the amount of vendors that they have available. And I think Google is essentially going to have that same effect happen due to how they're starting to push advertising. Like they're starting to automate, which means that a lot more business are going to be able to use ad platforms like Google, which, everybody thinks like, oh, anybody could run a Google ad. But no, anybody can't run a Google ad. And to date, it's taken, a specialist, a marketer who's a professional in paid media advertising in order to run campaigns effectively. But now, because of AI automating things, that's going to, that barrier is going to go away where now everybody can advertise. So no matter what industry you're in, you're having massive increases in competition. But the good side of it is that we have, AI now, which can essentially up level all of your marketing in a million different ways and allow you to compete in this kind of new, highly competitive, fast marketplace.
I love that. And Mark, you've been studying and really doing a huge deep dive into AI and how smart business owners should be adopting AI to influence their branding, to influence the content they come out with, and to really get a head start on everybody else. Because, I think that the hard thing with the AI is it's breaking down a lot of barriers that once were there. I know, especially for a lot of the overseas sellers that were not native English speakers, right? You could read their listings on Amazon or whatever marketplace, and you're like, this is not formal English, and you could very easily see like, okay, this is like an Asian style like speaking to us, right? And so that used to be an advantage, but with AI, like that is now gone. It's evening out more of this playing field, and so there's some pros and cons with AI. So, Mark, you're telling us there's probably more upside to AI than there are the cons of leveling the playing field for everybody. So, tell me, like, if you're talking to an e-commerce business owner and they do want to get ahead, they want to stay ahead, how do they incorporate AI into their marketing so that they are able to, take advantage and fight off the competition?
Yeah, and that's it's kind of funny because you think, oh, AI and it's going to be super high tech and use these awesome tools and create product videos and blah blah blah. We're not there yet, so it's I think those types of tools are coming, probably developed in mid to late 2025. But right now, what AI allows you to do is kind of traditional basic marketing tasks, just a whole lot faster and a whole lot better than you could before. And so instead of thinking like, okay, say you're an Amazon seller and you want to create a solid brand and a real online presence using your website is essentially the home base where you put all your content. You can do that and you can create loads of content. The trick is that now you have the ability to propagate kind of the core concepts and what we call the brand vision of the founder into everything that you do, which has not been possible in the past. Because if you wanted to say incorporate your brand vision, okay, we're a customer-centric brand. We really care about everything going right for the customer, and we're customer. But once you set up an operation, say you have 10 employees and you're hustling and you're trying to keep up and you're doing all these things, there's no way that you're managing your brand and really reinforcing that core message of customer centricity. And you just couldn't do it before. But with the AI, what you can essentially do is set your brand in place, set your values in place, your mission, everything that makes your brand. And now you could propagate those ideas through every process you have in your business. So now, okay, I set my vision. All right, I'm onboarding an employee. How should I onboard an employee? Oh, hey, let me go to AI. I'm going to install my vision. And now I'm going to produce a manual that allows me to train the employee properly, reinforcing our brand principles, reinforcing all our messages, and if just the thing I just said is skipped by the majority of small businesses because there's just so much work to do. And honestly, you don't know how to do HR tasks. Doesn't matter now. You could be a professional HR person and a maybe not professional, but competent enough accountant and bookkeeper and competent enough customer service manager and competent enough shipping, management and QA and whatever you want. All of these things you could actually do using AI, which before you just couldn't, because you would have to hire a person to do that. And then when you hire people for something that you yourself aren't capable of, now they're the ones setting the brand in place and they're the ones making the decisions and their values are the ones that are actually getting input into everything, not yours. And so the biggest advantage you have with AI is to essentially centralize all your business decision making and now propagate those ideas to everybody that you hire, whether that be a contractor or employee or marketing agency, in order to get things done, which again, would take you years of effort. And for most businesses, you think like, well, I'll get to that when I'm bigger. I'll get to that when I have time, or when I have enough employees, or when I have, it's like, no, you don't have time for that right now, because like we're talking about, just this increase in competition means that your only advantage as, say, a US based seller is your brand, is the content that you put out, is the care that you put into your customer service or your product selection or whatever it is. That's the only advantage you have. And what this all does, you can say it increases sales and whatever, but what it really does is reinforce the brand and build authority within the brand, which will then translate into sales, because they know like, oh, okay, Josh, I always go to Josh because I know they deliver on time. I know they care. They send follow-ups. They fix problems. They do all these things that I really care about. So instead of next time I need to buy something, I'm not going to just go to Amazon search. I'm going to go to Josh's shop because I can trust him. And then everything that I talked about are really these off Amazon tasks. But now you're not only reinforcing your brand on Amazon, but you're building a independent brand, you could call it, on your own platform. And now you're safer than you were before from being completely dependent.
Yeah, Mark, I think that is such an important important aspect that we should double down on right there is just the branding. And a lot of e-commerce business owners, especially if you got started on Amazon, you were kind of product first, right? Most, I would say 90% of the guys that went through the different courses, started selling products on Amazon, were just looking for a niche to get into. It wasn't, here's a brand, here's a mission, I'm going to build a bunch of products around this mission to go serve a specific audience. I think that's a rarity. It may happen, but it's more of a rarity. So what I see happening is a lot of people have launched a lot of products. Sometimes these products are in different verticals. We've been guilty of that at the same time, but it's been like niche opportunity rather than brand focused. But now I hear the tide is shifting and everybody is talking about brand, 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 brand. That is your differentiating factor, especially when you're on a marketplace like Amazon. And I think here's a little twist to this, Mark, that I'm going to challenge you on. When people go to Amazon, I'm surprised the number of people that will buy our product and then they get it in the mail and then they see like the picture of our family or whatever on the product packaging. And they're like, I had no idea, I got this from Amazon. It's like, do you not clearly see our family name in the brand on Amazon? But so many people still think like, how is Amazon carrying your product? Like they think they're buying from Amazon. They don't understand that there are brands that sit behind a lot of these. So I think it's kind of like it's a challenge because yes, branding's important, but then at the end of the day, people sometimes don't even know that they're buying from a brand. They just think they're buying from Amazon. So with that in mind, Mark, how can an e-commerce business owner double down on their branding if they've been more product centered first and they're kind of playing catch up right now? Tell me why branding is so important to become a differentiating factor, and maybe give me some ideas based on your 20 years of experience of like unique ways that, people could pitch a brand if they're kind of needing to formulate it from the beginning.
No, and that's a great question, because I think for a lot of people, like, branding itself, when you say branding, people just think of like a logo and maybe some colors and maybe some fonts that you use and the website name, and that's branding. And it's like, no, branding is every single impression that you make. So your example of, even just putting a postcard in a box where it's just like, and from our family to yours, like what you're doing is reinforcing that you're not just, an anonymous seller who's just trying to make a buck, but you're a family that put this together, selected the product, or, built the product from scratch. And, this is us, that's what you're buying. And you could do that with, your product selection specifically. But like you said, it's like people just like, oh, I'm just going to choose a random set of verticals because I found a deal on that and my profit margin is good on this and whatever. But branding to me is, no, what's your product selection strategy? What's your product categorization? A lot like content, because I come from, making magazines and I've done content forever. It's essentially the same thing. Like, how does this product reinforce the purchase of this product? Or how does the group of products reinforce that your company is the specialist in this category of product? Because that's branding. That's not, randomness based on your own profitability. And you could say that you're a profit first company, not really good for public branding. So if you can, number one, get your vision. Like, who are you? Why are you doing this thing? Nobody cares that you want to make lots of money. Nobody cares that your dream is to buy the land up the hill and blah, blah, blah. That's you. And that's fine. But to me, money is like air and water. Like, yeah, you need it. All right. You telling me how hungry you are is not going to, change anything about me. We all need to eat. And so if you could take that away, take your personal ambition away and just say, hey, what's the point? What's the point of you being here and doing this? Because if it's not money and your achievements and about you, it's about what? And so for most people, like you could say, okay, we're building a family brand to support other families. Like, okay, that's a vision right there. So what's the best way we can do that? Okay, we're going to do, if you're in print, it could be, we're going to reinforce weddings. We're going to reinforce, the cycle of life, babies, babies born, funerals. Like, we're just going to, this is us. We support the cycle of life and we do it through paper. And so it's like, okay, now I get it. Now I know exactly which products to buy. When people buy one thing, you could reinforce the story that you have, that, oh, hey, this is the fifth part of the 7 cycle system that we have, tried to reinforce with our products. And now you've taken something that was just a bunch of products, and now you're reinforcing it with story and background and credibility. And now that's something that people can attach to. Because with the onslaught of these vendors that are all basically just competing on price, they don't have that. They can't have that because it wouldn't be believable. Number one, where you're like, okay, a random company that produced these, slippers that I just bought.
I can't even pronounce your brand name because you picked
3
a bunch of
XYZ.
random letters to go get a super fast trademark approved by the USPTO because it's gibberish and nobody can actually pronounce it. Like, that ain't no brand ridiculous name, which I love seeing. When I see that on Amazon, I'm like, good. You guys are wrecking yourself because you're making it 10 times easier. A US consumer is going to be able to see through that garbage and be like, what in the onesie, or whatever? I can't even say this.
No.
And then you've got something else that you could pronounce and you're like, okay.
Yeah, or even if it just looks a certain way, because it's a lot of times, and we don't realize we're doing it. Like, a lot of the branding elements that we're, consuming all the time are almost invisible to us. We don't notice it, and I always go back to like Starbucks making you literally change the language you use when you walk in the door in order to order, because it's not small, medium, large, it's tall, grande, venti. And it's like, that's branding. Like, they just changed how you talk, Yeah. And so if you're able to do that, that's why for me, like, when I get into branding, it's not just like, okay, I got my vision, but then what are the terms I want to use? What's my definition of all these different industry terms? And so with my business, AI Branding Academy, that's what I started with. I'm like, you know what? There's no real standard definition for a marketing funnel. And how does a marketing funnel relate to a marketing campaign? And how does a marketing campaign relate to a brand strategy? And there's all these components just floating around. And so my first step was really like, okay, what does all of these things mean to my organization? And then I started to define it. And so when you're getting into this kind of branding, you really have to say like, okay, well, I want to be an authority. Like, my vision for my company is I want to be an authority in branding and marketing that essentially standardizes terms so that we can all speak the same language, and then we can build a better community that eventually elevates the entire marketing profession. That's my vision. And so with that vision, I can say, okay, well, what products or services would reinforce this vision of elevating the marketing profession? Oh, well, I could just, come out with your 101 courses, get people into it. Then I could get more advanced so that they know what to do. I can install my, theory of ethics and morality onto the profession itself so that I could reinforce goodness, which is another principle that we have. And so, it just makes decisions easier. Which is the funny part of branding. Everybody skips it to be like, no, I have to sell. So I have to make it $10,000 by next week, which means I just need to get the product up. I need to just buy that email list from some jerk online. I need to just swamp everybody that I can find with the offer. And then, numbers, it worked. And for the most part, yes, those kind of temporary marketing strategies can work, but it's at the expense of long-term brand equity, which is why it always comes back to branding. It's like, I don't care what trick you have. And honestly, in marketing, the entire industry has been built off of these hacks and tricks and basically, how do you hack the algorithm and how do you blah, blah, blah. It's like, what are you doing? Okay, are you planning on not being in business in 6 months? Because that's a good way to make a buck and then have nothing to follow up with because you burnt out the whole market that you just marketed to, or you just have no credibility because brand was not even a part of anything that you sold. So it's a shift for some people. It's a shift for the profession, really, because what I'm trying to say is, I don't care what you did this quarter or next quarter or even this entire year, because if it's not reinforcing some kind of centralized vision for what you're trying to achieve, you're probably going to fail. You're going to get bored, or the market's going to shift, or all of these different things. And what I'm talking about is really just purpose. Like, what's the purpose of everything that you do? Which, if you don't have that, and if your purpose is so weak, like, I want to be a millionaire, then it's not going to work either. So it's a shift, but it's a good shift, because now we're talking about long term instead of short term.
Mark, are there any good brands that you would recommend following in terms of the way that they've laid out their branding? Maybe some brands people could look to for a sense of inspiration that, like, these guys have crushed it. Go and follow and see what they're doing.
Yeah, if you want one that I think has done a really good job, not that I agree with their message, but Patagonia. Like, if you want a brand where it looks like they really live what they sell, then Patagonia is just like, oh crap. And a lot of these outdoor brands are really infused with the passion people have for the hobby. So you'll have to find your own based on your industry, but that's a really good one, where you can see it no matter what banner you're looking at, or what product they have, or everything about the design, the materials, the production, the customer service, the online presence, how they treat their online communities. Like, all of that is dialed in. And you have some other ones, and it does seem like fitness and stuff does a good job, but you have Peloton. Peloton's another one where, the product has been kind of iffy, but they have a fantastic community, and they're constantly reinforcing the message of community, working together, getting fit, and here's the healthy benefit. And it's all, good and long lasting. And even though, like, a company like that has had some massive bumps in the road. So if you want a bump in the road, like, try to get sued by, like, tens of thousands of people. That's a bump that would typically destroy companies. But if because of their brand, because of their community, they're able to weather the storm, even though they've screwed up quite a bit. And so that's another kind of side benefit where, okay, got the products in line, and it doesn't have to be complicated either. Because if you're saying, like, okay, we're environmentally sound, we're sustainably sourced, we're blah, 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 blah. That's a difficult one. If you just said, like, you know what, we just love yellow products. You want something yellow? We're the ones. I just love the color. The more I can put into the world, the better. And so everything you do is yellow. Like, that's how simple it could be. So, even though I always quote, like, these complicated, expensive brands, it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, just have something where people looked at your brand and they're like, oh yeah, that's the blank brand. Because if you can't say that, like, that's this brand, because very few people are going to remember your name, at first. But if they can say, oh, that's the yellow brand, like, oh, they just love yellow, and my niece loves yellow, so I always go back to the yellow shop, and that's where I buy my stuff. It's not that hard.
I love that. I love that simplicity. And I also love that you touched on like that brand truly does become like an anchor when you do have to weather really difficult times in your business, because they do happen. A, it gives you a sense of purpose, but B, hopefully, ideally, you've been able to build a community around your products and a following and brand evangelists and ambassadors that are willing to go to bat for you. And I think that's the future of Amazon. The people that win over the next 5 to 10 years on Amazon have solid brands, and they're driving traffic off of like outside Amazon traffic to their Amazon storefront, and people are specifically looking for their products. That, I think, is who's going to win, especially as AI continues to change things in the Amazon search algorithm. But Mark, we could go down that rabbit hole, but I think what we should focus on here is what you kind of presented at $1 Billion Seller Summit. And you shared kind of a framework that Amazon brand owners, e-commerce brand owners could implement in their business. You almost have like a walkthrough. I don't know if you want to share your screen, but kind of give me the lay of the land and rehash what you presented there, because I think that'd be super helpful for our listeners.
Sure. Yeah, it was actually pretty simple. It was basically like build your brand shop, which, I'm sure everybody has heard that before, like build your shop, build your shop. But branding is actually super easy. There's only like 3 graphics you have to make. You should have a good looking logo and a good message. But at the end of the day, if you just brand your shop, that already puts you above a lot of other companies who don't take the time to do that. And personally, it might just be me, but when I'm on Amazon, I'll always go to the person's shop because I want to see like, okay, what's the product mix? Like, is it look professional? Like, or even the product listings, like, do they speak the same way each time? Can I understand them? And all of this that I'm talking about is essentially customer training. You're training them to, okay, here's what we look like. Here's our colors. Here's all these different aspects. And so I basically, and I'll give you guys the link, I just produced these templates to show people, okay, just drop things into this box on Canva. And then all of a sudden you have a good looking brand. And so I'll share the link, but it actually has the presentation that I gave. And then the other big part was, and this is how we start every branding project, was just brand vision. Like, what's the point of what you're doing? And when I say brand vision, I'm not just saying like, we want to change the world. I always tell people it has to be two major parts of it. It's ambitious and it is quantitative. And so if if it's not ambitious, it's not going to inspire you. It's not going to inspire anybody else, your customers, your investors, your employees. It's lame if it's not ambitious. And then quantifiable is basically you have to have an end date and you have to have a number in mind. If your goal is to, serve 10,000 families across America, that's great. Now you could say that to people. Okay, we're trying to serve 10,000 families across America. Like, oh, that's ambitious, and then you make it, then that's actually the quantifiable part too. And then the only other part is just the time limited, where you're saying like, okay, it needs to be ambitious, it needs to be quantifiable, it needs to be, it needs a deadline. So you could say by 2026. Like, oh, okay, now I understand where you're going and what you're going to achieve and when you're going to get there. Now I could take that brand vision and I can propagate it to everything. And this is really what I'm talking about is marketing strategy, because a lot of times when people think like, well, how do I make a good projection of what I want to make? That's how you do it. You basically set the goal, you analyze your existing sales and performance, and then you just apply the two together. And people say like, I'm not good at math. You don't have to be. This is very simple math. And even ChatGPT, if you put this information in, I want to make $10,000 in sales. This is my target market. I currently do, a conversion rate of, 10%. And here's how many leads I typically get. And here's how much work I put into it. And literally you put this into a single prompt and it'll spit out a formula. It'll say, hey, well, based on this number and this number and this number, you need to get 5,000 clicks onto your Amazon store per month. Done. And now you say, okay, well, how do I do that? And then if you derive your entire strategy just from that one vision, the 10,000 families across America by 2026, now all the numbers come into place. And now there's no ambiguity about like, okay, well, what actually works? It's like, no, we make what we call the performance dashboard. And we basically track our leading metrics where we say, okay, here's how many website clicks I need. Here's how many unique visitors I need. Here's how many, if you're a higher end product, how many leads I need, whatever it is. And then you can backtrack from there. So even though what I'm talking about is like a lot of abstract branding type things, it sets the numbers in place, and then you derive the actions from that versus I just got to do things. I got to send 1 million emails, or I got to, post 1 million things. And it's like, who cares? Like you're not tracking it. Like randomly, you're going to get some sales. And if you did the tracking and you actually knew where they come from, you'd probably find out that it was just like a single ad worked on a single day. And that really hit it off. Or some influencer talked about you once and then, oh, look, I got a bunch of sales. So yeah, it's a little bit of work, I would say. But number one is just brand your shop. Just start there. Brand your shop, come out with your vision. And so if you want, I can actually walk you through the vision. It's super fun.
Let's do it.
We could do it for you.
So to our listeners, come check this video out on YouTube. Mark will be sharing his screen.
All right. So this is the Amazon Branding Playbook kind of landing page. This is that presentation that you mentioned. It just has some basic Canva templates, but these are sized specifically for the Amazon shop. So if you click on these, you'll actually see like, oh, it's just my logo with one background image and it's a boxed logo. Like it's not hard, especially if you're, if nobody's doing anything. Like just doing these basic things will help a lot. And then I put the brand vision creator in here. And the brand vision creator is, again, the first step we use. We basically, at AI Branding Academy, we call it the AI Brand Blueprint, which is like a 100-page document. And it has, I think, like 140 prompts that you run in order to get the answers to build this entire framework. But it all starts with this one piece, which is brand vision. So all you have to say is, I need to create my brand vision for my company. And this is, what industry is your business or brand in? And we could use you, Josh, if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What would you categorize yourself?
So we would be a stationary brand.
Stationary brand. Great. You're in the stationery industry. Question 2, what does your business provide to your customers? Here are some options to consider. High quality notebooks and journals. And you could actually just respond with whatever you want. But no matter what, like the way we make GPTs is it gives you a checklist, a bunch of potential answers just to simplify the process. So in this case, you have high quality notebooks. Oh, go ahead.
We would do, so the response to this would be calendars, planners, educational posters, event party invitations. So broad array.
Party invitations. Now, if you wanted to, because I was talking about that product categorization, we could actually drill into that in this GPT if we wanted to. So we'll say, before I answer the next question, could you please assess my last answer and create a list of potential categories that my offering would fit in? And this is the thing with AI that I really like, that you don't have to use it like you've always used programs, because a lot of times when we think of like using AI, we're expecting it to give us everything, like all the questions we want. And it works differently in the sense that, no, you don't have to go off the answers or the questions. You could just ask whatever you want and it'll still provide answers. So in this case, it came up with a list. It said, based off your offering, calendars, planners, educational posters, and event party invites, here's a list of potential categories that your products could fit into: organizational stationery, educational stationery, event and celebration stationery, personalized stationery, or decorative stationery. What'd you say fits, Josh?
So here's, now that I'm speaking to a branding expert in yourself, I'm interested to get your take on this, because really it could be either of those top 3, right? And that's kind of the challenge that I told you about before. We were definitely more of like a product first business when we first started, right? It was like, find the niche. And then we just went all over the place, right? So we're not just a party goods company. That's kind of actually the way we started, but then it is expanded much more sense then, right? And so we're not just an organizational company, we're not just an educational company. So maybe a question I have for you, Mark, is like, at what point does it make sense to maybe create like sub brands within a bigger brand? And I think that's a little bit more complicated, but give me your take on that.
That's a great question. And now what you could do, and this is, I've actually used this in the past with the agency that I used to have, where I was like, I'm serving too many industries. I had like 24 industries. And I was like, I don't want to work with all these people. And two, I can't standardize any of my processes because everybody is so different. And so I just looked at the list and I said, okay, who's, spends a lot of money with me? And then I looked at, okay, who have I enjoyed working with? And then, what's a balance of those two features? And for me, I came up with healthcare providers, where I was like, I like doctors because they spend a lot of money. They don't ask a lot of questions. I get creative freedom to do what I want, and everybody wins. And so I actually created a brand specifically for that while I still had my brand. And so that's tip number one, is don't kill anything that you're doing that's working. Because you'll always think like you'll put all your hopes and dreams into the new brand, which I've seen too many companies do. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stop doing a good job over here because this new thing is gonna crush. And it's like, it probably will. However, it's going to take 6 to 12 months. So I think that coming up with a single niche is a great idea. And in the meantime, what you could do is essentially just categorize your products, even if you're duplicating them into multiple categories. And so even if you're doing, say, all of these, different products can fit into each one of these, then you could still do that. You just have a focus on, you're an organizational, so organizational category, and then educational category, and events and celebration category, and all of them could duplicate all products. You're just basically guiding people, to say like, hey, it's organizational, and even if it isn't special within that category, you could still categorize it like that. The other alternative would be to really look at your product, the differentiating factors, and then base the category off of that. So let's say that you only use recycled paper. So it's like, okay, we're in the recycled paper niche. We'll talk about sustainability. We'll talk about, lack of waste. We'll talk about that. And so even if you don't have like a set product category per se, you could have a feature niche where you're like, we're only this. So would you say you have something like that that's like, okay, this is the thing that really makes us different overall?
I'd say the core thing that makes us different overall is the artist that sits behind it, and that's my wife, right? And so she is she went to school for early childhood education, and so that's why we have a lot of educational related products. But then she's big into creating parties and celebrations, so thus we have all the events. And then she loves like planning and organizing. So that's kind of where all of these ideas kind of like stem from, to be honest with you, is like her passions and what she's always envisioned from like a younger age.
Yeah, well, that's a huge niche right there, because what you have there is a curated, artistically curated list of products and a backstory behind it. So if I were you, I would go for more of a story niche, where you're saying like, I started here in early education because I love kids, and I had to, create all the stationery for all the different projects that we had at the school. And so I ended up not having to source for that. And so I, because I identified that need, I was the one that had to create it. And I've always loved this. And then you would just build that story. And so if you want to support people who really care about putting pen to paper because of the connection that you have with the paper, we're the brand for you. And so, and that's enough right there. If you wanted to just start telling the backstory, that would elevate your brand substantially. And then you also have a PR angle that you could take on that as well, and a woman-owned angle. And a woman designed angle, whatever you want to do. But that would probably be enough, where you don't have to categorize any more than that. And then eventually you could sub-brand into, the specific organizational one, the specific educational one, the specific event and celebration one. But you'd maintain that backstory and just make those sub-brands.
Makes sense. Love it.
So yeah, we'll go ahead and say, let's see. For the offering, the primary differentiator is that our products are a curated list chosen specially by a former educator that really loves the concept of communicating through print. There you go. I got pretty lazy with that. That wasn't even what I wanted. But it basically curated organization.
The idea, right?
But overall, that would be the brand. So this is brand. Sure. There you go. But even this process, like, because a lot of times you think like, oh, I gotta, go through all this work to get my head right around it. All you have to do with AI is just keep on asking questions, like keep going.
Yeah.
If you don't understand something, ask about that. Like we just did, where it's like, oh, we don't really, that's not really our specialty, is just the different categories. It's really how we find those products that make the product special. So you just keep asking, like, what makes us special? But what are things that could make a company special? Like, all those things will walk you through the path. But that's really the benefit of AI, is you don't have to restrict yourself to somebody else's process. You just go off on your own whenever you feel like it. So let's keep moving. We'll go to question 3. Let's define your core purpose based on your industry offerings and the unique aspect of your brand. Here are 5 example core purposes to choose from: to empower organization and creativity through expertly curated stationery, to enhance communication and learning with educator-selected print products, to inspire productivity and joy through thoughtfully chosen planners and educational materials, to celebrate life's moments with carefully curated high-quality stationery, or to provide trusted educator-endorsed stationery that enriches lives through print.
Yeah, let's go with number 1 there.
Number 1, all right. And again, if you don't see the answer you want, just ask for more. Like it's so cool, which is why people freaking out about AI. I'm like, it's the coolest thing. Okay, question 4. Now let's set an ambitious goal for your brand. Here are 5 options tailored to your industry offerings and core purpose: to become the leading brand for curated stationery in schools and homes across the country, to inspire 1 million people to organize their lives through our curated stationery products, to revolutionize how educators and learners communicate through print, becoming a trusted resource worldwide, to be the go-to brand for curated stationery that blends organization with creativity, recognized in every major retailer, or to empower creativity and organization in 500,000 homes with our expertly curated products by 2026.
Yeah, I like the to inspire 1 million people and the timestamp there, but maybe combined with like number 3.
Yeah, I like that. So you could say combine numbers 2 and 3. And again, when you do this, you could just say switch the number from 1 million to 50,000. Like that's pretty simple. So to inspire 1 million people, including educators and learners, to organize their lives and revolutionize communication through our curated stationery products, becoming a trusted resource worldwide.
Perfect.
And that's it. And so, you could add the date in there, right? Like, we want to hit 1 million by the end of 2026. And that basically just adds that curated stationery products by the end of 2026. But again, even just saying that phrase or some, variation of it when you talk to people is like, wow, this is a brand. Like, this is somebody with a mission, and they know where they're going. And don't think that anybody's going to remember this other than you. But when they hear it the first time, they're going to be like, oh, that's neat. I like that. That's something I can attach, emotion to. And now let's go ahead and go. And so and again, this is just the first step in a long process. It does take, a little bit to go through what we call the brand pillars. That's just step 1 of 9. But once you have all this information, we essentially teach people how to put it into a custom GPT. And then now, whenever any employee or anybody has a question that involves any of these aspects, you just give them the link. and you're like, hey, we don't need to talk about this because just ask the AI. It'll give you the answer if I'm not available.
I like that. So ultimately what you're saying is like the core is to build a custom GPT that understands, knows your brand, so that anybody that you hire or train can go there to that custom GPT and ask questions and say, hey, I need to create new images for X, Y, and Z product. Give me some recommendations. And then it's spitting out like, it's incorporating that vision that we just talked about and the underlying mission and values of the brand. Is that the gist of it?
Yep. It's basically setting the principles in place and then stepping back, because, we're humans. We change constantly. And our answer to your question might be completely different on Monday than it was on Friday. And so what it leads to is a massive inconsistency, even from the top people, the owner of the company who has the most to gain. If everything goes well, she'll still just spout out junk because we are just emotionally driven. And so, if you want to make sure the consistency, this is the best way to do it. Build the brand bot. You can call it whatever you want. And now I don't need to be on fire. Like, I don't need to be inspired every day as the leader of my organization, because the AI is going to tell you what I carefully thought through and put into place in order to, propagate my brand to everyone. And so it makes hiring easier, makes decision making easier. And now there's no more excuse really for not maintaining your brand.
Mark, I absolutely love this. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. We did not talk about this before we hit record, but is there a framework or maybe like a template that you could share to help us understand what does the template look like to build that custom GPT? I know you mentioned there's like 9 pillars, but do you have like a Google Doc or something that you could share just as like a framework?
Yeah. It's actually just a simple article where it just says, here's what we're doing. So I'll send that to you and you could share that. We do have a course too. It's called How to Build Your Brand Pillars. And it's just a series of 9 GPTs where it's just like, click here. All right, you got this. Now get this one, and now get this one. And it actually just walks you through the process. So I've walked through businesses with it. It takes like an hour to an hour and a half. And then all of a sudden you have this set of information. And then most of the things that we do at the academy, it just asks before you do anything, you need to make a podcast. What are your brand pillars? And then you input your brand pillars. And then now you've set it, everything in place because it knows who you are, knows what your mission is, what your values are. And then now that goes into the process and now everything is consistent. So it's pretty simple. And but I'll have an article if you guys want to check that out. And then if you want to actually make them, just take the course or, then you're set. And it gets much more complicated because
for sure.
The other thing is things like music selection. Like if you're making a video, product video, like what background music best represents your brand? Okay, you got that in place. Okay, let's talk about, you do some talking head videos. Like, what does your background look like? Is it reinforcing the brand or is it taking away from the brand? Like, I don't know. What lighting should you have? What smells should happen when people walk into your office? Like all of these are actually aspects of branding that very few people do. We always talk about, Apple, and we talk about Nike, and we talk about these huge brands, and you're like, you want to wait until you get to a $1 trillion brand to go ahead and start doing this crap? It's like, no, you should be doing it, especially doing it day one, because one customer could make an enormous difference to your business, depending on what business it is, or 100 customers or whatever. But if you don't set these things up in the first place, like you're missing out the opportunity to essentially gain these people's trust.
Yeah. Mark, this has been fantastic. As we wrap things up, is there anything that you feel like we haven't talked about that you really need to drive home the message to our 7-figure e-commerce entrepreneurs?
I'm going to reinforce the content, because a lot of people hear content and they think like, what AI tool can I use to make a bunch of crap content? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about good content, like what is useful, valuable content, and also what there's infinite topics. So a lot of people, when they hear like make content, they're like, well, I don't want to write an article about how to clean your hiking boots because there's a million articles about clean hiking boots. It's like, no, if you haven't answered every question your potential customer can have, then they're getting the answer from a competitor. Is that what you want? Is that going to help your business? No, it's not going to help your business. So content is literally like you have to answer and define everything, every single aspect, because if you haven't, you're relying on somebody else and they're getting the traffic, not you. So I would say do content, do good content, and make sure it's useful, because the other side of the content that I always say is it's reinforcing your customer support without you having to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And honestly, and the reason why it always comes into AI is because eventually you're going to be able to power a very useful AI with your data set. And if you don't have a data set, then you're not going to have a very unique AI, and then people just go somewhere else to get the answers. So it's reinforcing the future without you having to actually understand what's going to happen.
Well articulated, Mark. Well articulated. So
I'm always like, am I too long? Do I use too many words to explain these things?
No, this is great. And it's a deep topic. And so here would be, as we wrap things up, I'd love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from every episode. So here are the actionable takeaways that I noted. So number 1 is create a true brand. And if you have not established that vision and you don't have a meaningful purpose or vision, I love what you shared, Mark. I think that's really important to drive home is like, do you have a number that's measurable? And do you have a time frame that's measurable as well? That is one of the most important things that I think an entrepreneur can incorporate into their brand vision, to say, like, how can we inspire 2 million, 3 million, whatever your number is, by a certain date, and to do what? And that then allows everything else, kind of like sets that base. And so that would be my recommendation. And you guys heard kind of a little mini consultation for our own brand, right? Where we have been primarily like product first. If you've been product first, figure out that brand message behind it, because over the next 5 years, that's what's going to set you apart as competition increases and as margins decrease. Okay. So action item number 2, I'm going to say, build that custom GPT bot that understands your framework. So like Mark said, like, go through his course or try building it yourself, but create a custom GPT that anybody on your team can go back and reference to understand the true mission and vision and the core values that sit behind your brand. It's funny, as I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, as soon as they start scaling and their teams cross 50 people, 75 people, and they're no longer, they don't have personal relationships with each of their team members, they realize how things start to break down. And so I love what you drove home the point of, is have a GPT that is never tired, is never, out of energy or whatever, but is constantly driving home the same key message, even as people come in and out of the business. So I think that sets a really good foundation to be able to scale to those 8 figures and beyond. And then last but not least, Mark, you talked about driving home content. So if you're not putting out content or having influencers, creators, brand ambassadors putting out content for you, I think that's where the big miss is happening. Because if you're not doing that, you're not driving home who you are and being able to educate people. Because I think as times change and as people get tired of the cheap crap that they buy from overseas sellers, it is going to be like, who sits behind this brand? And Mark, you already talked about it yourself. You are the type of customer that actually clicks on the storefront site on Amazon, and you want to learn more, and you're going to go check out their social media profiles. So if brands aren't doing that and they're just like, I'm only narrowly focused on Amazon, I think you miss out in the long term. So those are my 3 action items. Mark, anything else you would add to those?
No, I think if you did those, you'd probably be ahead of like 99% of businesses. Like, it's, what I'm trying to teach is essentially advanced marketing and branding concepts without you having to understand any of it. Like, just do it and it'll be amazing. Like, you'll be okay.
Brilliant. All right, Mark. Now we'll transition to our final 3 questions here that I ask every guest. So number 1, what's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
You know what? This is a new one that I actually just finished recently. It's called the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and it's incredible because it really puts in place the purpose of purpose, if you want to look at that, and breaks down like all of existence in a way that is extremely applicable to branding. I always relate everything to branding, but it's really about like how do you find what you are, and then how do you propagate it, doing whatever you're going to do. And I think this book is super short, but really breaks down the concept of essentially combining our spiritual, mental, and physical goals all into like one process. And if you read this book and try to apply it to your business, like you'll probably do really well.
Fantastic. I think we've actually got that book recommendation one other time from somebody else. So
really?
Interesting to hear a second vote for that one.
Oh, it's
so
incredible.
Cool.
I was like just mind blown with like every chapter.
Love it. All right, Mark, second question. What is your favorite AI tool that you've been using that you would recommend other people need to be utilizing?
You know, in terms of just like what, if I was still doing my marketing agency, what would have made everything like way easier? I would say Midjourney. Midjourney is a AI art generation tool. But if you prompt it properly, and I've kind of built, I call it the branded Midjourney prompt generator, you could essentially make infinite amounts of branded images for whatever you want to use them for. And I'm not saying like products are a little special, but the background imagery, like basically as a replacement for stock imagery, it has saved me so much time. Because as you know, I did website development. I have folders with tens of thousands of stock images just because finding a good one is really hard. And so I just started collecting for a million years. But yeah, I would say Midjourney is probably my favorite right now.
Excellent recommendation. And again, another pitch to, you've got those prompts. So I think that's what it's garbage in, garbage out. And so I think people being able to find you, Mark, learn more about the prompts that you've been able to like tailor specifically to your brand, I think is truly going to be the difference maker, because everybody talks about all this AI stuff and it's only as good as like the plan that you have behind it. And so I love that you have that kind of tailored in. All right, third and final question here, Mark. So who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following, and why?
You know what? Scott Cunningham, he has Social Light. He speaks all over the place, but he actually worked with me to produce one of the certifications we had at Digital Marketer, and that the e-commerce certification. But he has the e-commerce tree of life is the framework that he talks about, but breaks down the whole process of e-com really easy, and it's all infused with kind of long-term good marketing strategy, but still simple enough where anybody can get it, even if say you're just a solopreneur and you're trying to make a few bucks. He's pretty awesome. So yeah, I'd say Scott.
Great recommendation. He's a new one we haven't heard from before, so this will be
really good.
Somebody good for other people to go check out and follow. Mark, this has been excellent. You've got my mind turning now. I'm constantly thinking about, all right, what's our new branding and vision going to be? So, Mark, if people want to learn more, they want to figure out what you got going on with your courses, they want to learn how to build these custom GPTs, where can people find you and follow you at?
So at my website, markgrasse.com, that's where I put my more philosophical type stuff, like predictions about the future. Really for practical application, you go to aibranding.academy. That is my educational institution. We're actually, now doing live events, and we have a bunch of online courses, free GPTs, tutorials. Like basically, I'm trying to give everybody the step-by-step approach to do themselves, whether they're a creative, a marketer, or not. These will still be useful because I made them so simple. And then we're actually we're partnering with other companies that could do the done for you, that will refer you to. But really my goal is to train anybody how to do marketing. And with AI, I could actually do that now. So very excited.
Yeah, highly recommend it. Mark has 20 years of experience. He's created lots of courses in the past. They're a digital marketer, as we heard before. And so Mark knows his stuff. So highly recommend you guys go check out those AI tools and what he's talking about there. So Mark, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Josh. Always fun.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecombreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.